So, when you don't know how to do something, how to fix something, or how something works, what do? Ask a teacher? Ask your parents? Ask your friends? Ask someone you really know and trust? No! You go to the internet and ask some randos. But I'm not talking about creeps here, I hope. No, I mean the people of the internet! You know, those people who make how-to videos. Because chances are, if you're trying to figure out something, someone on the internet has already figured it out for you. Things like, how do I unsend a text? No. How do I do a winged eyeliner? How do I get rid of the zit by Friday night? How do I get out of gym class? How do I screen cap Snapchat without getting caught? They'll never know. But then there are things in life that don't have an easy fix, that don't have a simple solution, that don't have a how-to video. Things like what to do when you have problems with family, or when it seems like you have no control in your life, or what to do when someone has done something to you. I mean, clearly, they gotta go. The truth is, there's a lot of life that doesn't have a solution you can just find online. So how do you know what to do when you don't know what to do?
When I was in high school, my friends and I went to Taco Bell a lot, and we loved it. But also it was one of the only fast food restaurants in my town, so we really couldn't be picky about where we were eating. Now, when I was in high school, you could order a couple tacos and drink water, and you could have a great after-school snack for around $1, making it the perfect place for those of us who were short on cash. The only problem was, $1 for me was still a lot of money. So there were a lot of days when I showed up at Taco Bell and I did not have the money to order anything. So on those days, I just played it off real coolly and said that I wasn't hungry. My friend Mike would pay attention when I said I wasn't hungry, and he knew it was more of a money issue than a hunger issue. So he would tell me, just order a couple tacos, I got you. And every time Mike would cover for me, I'd say, man, thank you so much, I'll pay you back. And he would say, no need, you're good. Now, to this day, I still remember that. I was this poor sophomore who couldn't afford to buy cheap tacos, and Mike was this really wealthy junior who picked up my tab without asking for payback. Not seeking payback is really heartwarming and cozy when it comes to borrowing money for tacos, but that is not always the case. Outside of paying money back to someone you owe, the idea of payback also comes up when someone hurts us. For example, when someone talks about us behind our back, we want payback. When someone flirts with our girlfriend or boyfriend, we want payback. When someone fails to text us back or invite us to a group outing, we want payback. In those moments when we've been hurt, we want payback. We want revenge. We want them to feel the pain and the hurt that we felt. We want them to be embarrassed the way we were embarrassed. We want to get back at them for the pain they caused us. Our first reaction almost always is to get even, to seek revenge, to make someone feel the same discomfort that we felt when they hurt us. And isn't it true that the closer we are to a person, the more we want payback? Most of you aren't trying to pay back someone else's brother or sister. Your feelings probably aren't hurt because of someone else's best friend, and you probably aren't angry because of what someone else did. The people who are closest to you and the people who know you best have the most potential to hurt you. And when they do, we want payback. Now, for most of us, payback comes in one of three ways. First, public payback. This is when we do to them what they did to us in an obvious way. We talk bad about the person who talked bad about us. We snap back and make some cutting statements to them in return. Second, passive payback. Now this way is way more subtle. We make comments that aren't obviously hurtful, but could be interpreted that way. We put that subtle post on social media. We roll our eyes when someone talks. We ignore someone else's text. Third, imaginary payback. This one's my favorite. Now this is when payback happens when we have an argument in our minds and we dominate. We get the last word even though the offense will never actually be discussed. It just takes over our thoughts and we never do anything about it. And what's amazing is that sometimes we do have the opportunity for payback. And if not payback, then at least the chance to celebrate when things fall apart for the person who hurt us. Like when someone who hurts us messes up and now we are loaded up with ammunition to kick them while they're down. Or when our ex who broke up with us for someone else then gets dumped. Or when our mom snaps at us and hurts our feelings and now she's crying and apologizing, and it is just the perfect setup for us to put an exclamation mark on her regret. In those moments, it feels like karma, doesn't it? I mean, karma just means that you'll get what's coming to you, whether that's good or bad. And that is exactly the sort of situation that Joseph found himself in as we wrap up our story. Now, in this series, we have been journeying through the life of Joseph, whose story is found in the book of Genesis. And his story is a wild one. Early in this series, we talked about how Joseph knew he was his dad's favorite and then rubbed it in his brothers' faces. Joseph also has a dream where he was in charge of the whole family, and then he tells his older brothers about it, which only made matters worse. Not cool, Joe. So Joseph's brothers plot to kill him, which seems like a slight overreaction, but I wasn't there. Instead, they see a group of travelers traveling through the town, and they decide to make a little money by selling Joseph as a slave. The rest of the series has covered Joseph as a slave in Egypt, Joseph as a slave in a prison in Egypt, and Joseph as the man who interpreted the dreams of Pharaoh, who was the ruler of Egypt. Now, Joseph is eventually placed in charge of all of Egypt. He is the second in command to Pharaoh, and that is not a bad outcome for a kid who was sold into slavery by his own brothers. But then, there's a plot twist. After Joseph is second in command, there's this big famine where his family lives. So Joseph's dad, Jacob, sent the brothers to Egypt to ask for food. Now, at this point in the story, Joseph's family thought he was dead. They weren't even thinking about the possibility of seeing Joseph when they get to Egypt to ask for food. When they arrive in Egypt and see Joseph, not knowing that it's Joseph, a huge drama unfolds. And you can read some of these interactions between Joseph and his brothers in Genesis 42 through 50. And trust me, you do not want to miss it. Reading through the back and forth, knowing the backstory, it's like watching a movie. All right, so let's pick up in Genesis 45. Then Joseph could no longer control himself before all his attendants, and he cried out, "Have everyone leave my presence." So there was no one with Joseph when he made himself known to his brothers, and he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard him, and Pharaoh's household heard about it. And Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph, is my father still living?" But his brothers were not able to answer him because they were terrified at his presence. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Come close to me." When they had done so, he said, "I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. For 2 years now there has been famine in the land, and for the next 5 years there will be no plowing and reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance." Now, there's only one reason Joseph could have responded the way he did. He didn't try to get payback because he had already let go of the idea of revenge. He had already done the hard work of forgiveness. How do we know that? Because Joseph could look in the eyes of the ones who had caused him the most grief, and he could see beyond his own hurt. When Joseph said, "Do not be distressed, do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here," he was acknowledging their wrong and his hurt without seeking payback. Only a healed person could do this. Only someone who had forgiven could do this. Now, Joseph chose forgiveness over payback, and we see that in the moment where he had the greatest opportunity for revenge. Somewhere between being sold into slavery and being reunited with his brothers, Joseph did the hard work of giving his hurt to God and allowing God to be central in his healing. And that's why Joseph was quick to acknowledge God in the area where his brothers had caused him the most pain. It didn't make what his brothers did okay. It didn't make Joseph's pain any less. It just took the real pain and the real hurt and no longer put them at center stage. It put God there instead. And that made forgiveness possible. Forgiveness was not only for his brothers, it was freedom from his own pain too. Joseph went on to tell his brothers to go get their father and move the entire family to Egypt because the famine would continue, and without making this move, his family would suffer. And then this happens. And he kissed all his brothers and wept over them. Afterwards, his brothers talked with him. This is the perfect picture of reconciliation. This is where we see peace take over a relationship that was incredibly fractured, all because of forgiveness. When it comes to other people hurting us, we too have the opportunity to choose reconciliation over payback. In fact, here's a simple way to remember it. When you don't know what to do, pursue peace instead of payback. When you pursue peace, you build a bridge. Payback burns bridges. In other words, you can fight to win, to be right, to get even, to make a point, or you can fight for the relationship, but you cannot do both. When you pursue peace, you fight for the relationship. Joseph preserved his relationship with all of his brothers because he chose peace, and he was only able to do that because he fought for forgiveness, and he was only able to forgive with the help of God. Now, Joseph didn't have a superpower that allowed him to do all of this. He just had determination to do the work that peace requires, which means that you and I can do this too. When you pursue peace, you lay down your right to get payback. You let go of revenge. You say goodbye to your desire to get even. Instead, you choose the path of forgiveness. You choose God's story of reconciliation instead of your own story of payback and revenge. Now, this is way easier said than done, and something that you may have to work at every day, but the ultimate benefit is for you. You not only have peace in the relationship, you have peace within you. Now, when Joseph encountered situations where he didn't know what to do, he trusted that God had a much bigger story in mind. I believe that Joseph knew that peace was better than payback. Even though Joseph had no clue whether he would ever see his brothers in person again, when he did, he was ready because he had done the work of forgiveness in his own heart. He had given his hurts over to God. So as you head out, think about what you have the power to do when it comes to pursuing peace. What do you need to decide in your heart? Who do you need to forgive? What offense do you need to bring to God? He can do incredible things with your fractured story. It starts with you and I choosing to forgive so that we can pursue peace instead of payback.